Welcome to Conversations with Leaders in Luxury. I'm Greg Furman, founder and chairman of the Luxury Marketing Council. Since 1994, 1,000 luxury brands in 57 cities worldwide, some 5,000 CEOs and CMOs. Today I have the pleasure of being with Anouk Pappers, who is the CEO and brand anthropologist for Cool Brands here in New York for the next week or so via Amsterdam, which is her base, and Dubai, where she had a chance to be with my partner in Dubai, Mac McClelland. So thank you all for joining us, and Matthew Evans today for providing us with the forum where we could video this. I appreciate the luxury of your company and the investment of your time. Anouk, it's great to have you here. Welcome to New York.
Thank you.
A good time of year.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me. Really pleasure to be here as well.
And this is our second adventure. We did a great lunch together where you were able to talk to, at one of our Inner Circle CEO salons, to about 30 top luxury brands. And it was we were saying earlier, it was a great event. Talk a little bit about before Cool Brands, so people have a little bit of a sense of your education, what you studied as an anthropologist leading up to Cool Brands. So we have a little feeling for you. Raised in Amsterdam?
I was raised in Amsterdam. Actually, my mom was a school teacher, and she raised me with a lot of books. And the books I really, really liked was travel books, adventure books. So I was reading Around the World in 80 Days when I was
one of my faves.
A little girl.
Yeah.
And actually then I decided this is what I want to do. I want to explore the world. I want to travel the world. So I decided to study anthropology. But most of the studies of anthropology is reading books about other people's travels. So when I finished my studies, I said, okay, I'm going to...
Did you study in Amsterdam?
I studied in Amsterdam, yeah. And after my studies, I said, well, that's enough of books and Amsterdam. Now I'm going to travel. And that's actually how I started Cool Brands. Because I said, what I really want to do, I want to travel, I want to meet people, get to know other cultures. And one way of doing that is by traveling, by meeting people.
So you literally, you did your PhD, did you, in anthropology?
Yeah.
And what university, where did you study?
It was the University of Amsterdam where I studied.
So you literally went from school to on the road to creating a company that helped you realize your dream and love of travel.
Yeah, I wandered around a little bit, of course,
right.
not exactly at the first moment I founded Cool Brands. But it was by traveling, by meeting people, by getting their stories. I thought, wow, this is so cool. This is so enriching for myself. Why don't I make a business out of it and go around, meet people with a vision, brands with a purpose, because brands, they usually have a budget, because I also have to make a living. Yeah. So the idea was, okay, I'm going to travel. I'm going to meet these people, meet these brands, create their stories. And instead of keeping the stories to myself, why don't I share those stories with influencers worldwide and inspire them to do good stuff? So, for example, one of my favorite brands or best brands with good example is GE. And GE does a lot of stuff on the level of people and planet. And sharing these good examples with people will inspire others to do good as well. So
where did you, when you did the between foundation of Cool Brands, exiting the academic world and reading about travel with the intent of traveling, what were your favorite parts? How long did you travel and what were the favorite parts of your travels?
I traveled on and off. So my base has always remained Amsterdam, and I traveled to Asia, to China, and at a certain moment I discovered Latin America, and in particular Brazil. Mm-hmm. And Brazil stole my heart.
Yeah, Brazil's fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah,
we have to have you meet Vera Lopez, who runs our Brazilian chapter out of Sao Paulo, and I've had the privilege of being down there a number of times, Sao Paulo and Rio, and it is the music, the people, the ocean. It's just extraordinary.
So in Brazil, I went there a lot of times, and then I started to work for tourism boards, because when you are in
not Europe, as Cool Brands, but just on a freelance.
Well, as Cool Travel actually. Okay. So it was already Cool Brands, Cool Travel was started.
Oh, so you already started as your travels unfolded. You started right away. Yeah.
And so the tourism board asked us, okay, can you please go there and write stories that have nothing to do with samba and football? Because Brazil has much more to offer than does this. So we went into the Pantanal, which is a huge swamp, We did hunting for a jaguar, of course, with the cameras. We went into the Amazon, so it's really showing nature, but local people, creating stories that will inspire you to go to Brazil as well.
Now, you used the word we. So at that point in time, you and Martin were business partners then. So maybe you talk a little bit about Martin, who we'll also be talking to a little later today.
Yeah, we met in 2002, and actually we met at a spiritual level, because our goal in life is the same. We want to grow. We want to grow by experience, and we want to share our experiences. And that's where we said, okay, for me, it was traveling, was very, very clear. And Martin said, well, I also like to travel because that will really help us grow, get out of our comfort zone and grow our comfort zone. Because one of our goals is that one day I can travel the world with my hands in my pockets and feel at ease everywhere.
Right, that's a great goal. Citizen of the world.
Exactly.
I think I share that aspiration, and it's a joyful pursuit, joyful journey. So, was your first gig, so to speak, yours and Martin's with the tourism board in Brazil? Or one of the first?
One of the first, yeah.
So talk about what they got out of it by reason of your involvement.
Yeah, what we did, so we traveled to certain parts of the country. We wrote some stories as two people traveling in Brazil. We made some pictures, some video, and we shared that with the tourism boards. So they used it in their communication at travel fairs, etc., to attract another kind of tourist than the people who just want to go to the beach.
And I know that you do many very innovative things in terms of the product that you share. So when you talk about what you did for Brazil, it's not your typical video. So talk a little bit specifically about the products that you produced for them, because I think there's a lot there, given some of the other things I've heard you speak about.
Well, actually, the thing we did in the beginning for Brazil, that's such a long time ago. So we didn't have social media yet. We didn't have augmented reality yet. So maybe it's better if I talk about a project.
Okay, so Brazil, I'll take your lead. So Brazil really was toe in the water, so to speak. And then, all right, then fast forward a little bit, and I think maybe that's a good place to go. Thanks for the lead on it. And talk a little bit about how now, in a totally web-enabled age with social networking, how that has been married from a communications strategy and marketing standpoint to your love of travel and ability to tell a unique story.
Yeah, well, actually, what we saw around 3 years ago is that our business changed completely. We saw, I mean, we travel the world. So let's say next week we'll be in Mumbai. So what I used to do is I would send an email to the CEO of a company in Mumbai saying, "Dear sir, we'll be in Mumbai next week. We really would like to hear your story." And he would say yes or no, depending on his schedule. Some years ago, something changed. Instead of just looking at his schedule, he started to Google us. And this ties into a global trend that we've seen, which is called the reputation economy.
So you had built for yourselves as a business critical mass and reputation online, which gave you the kind of leverage that you're now enabling your customers, myself included, thank you, and others, to tell a story using the full portfolio of integrated media.
Yeah, the thing is, what we see, what I believe, is that your reputation is the most important asset you have. There is nothing as important as your reputation. And in the real world, we all have a reputation. The people who know you, you have a fantastic reputation. But since a few years, Google has become the new background check.
Yes.
So if you want to open up a new chapter, if you want to start a new activity, you have to talk about it. You have to create content. You have to make people aware online that you exist in the first place.
Yep.
And you have to tell them what your vision is. And we've seen this from our own experience, that if we would not have our stuff online, we would not meet the guy in Mumbai.
Yes.
He would say, "Who's Anouk, who's Martin,
Yes.
who's Cool Brands?" No, you're not there, so you don't exist. Even if you have a great reputation, it has to be there.
Well, you know, one of the things that you said when we had our Inner Circle CEO Salon luncheon, that you could almost hear a gasp in the room that really struck people. was that there is no longer a differentiation between a traditional corporate bio and one's personal life. The technology now obviates all of that, so that the two are now one, whether one likes it or not. And from a traditional marketing standpoint, I think you're still, though you've been ahead of the curve for a long time, still ahead of the curve as pertains to the way a lot of brands understand that. I think that's news. I would venture to say to a lot of our members that there's still a church and state delineation between personal and between corporate, and that's something that you've learned and are teaching companies how to better leverage.
Yeah, I think there is no, it is you. You're a business owner, so for you it's very clear. You are the Luxury Marketing Council. Meg in Dubai is the Luxury Marketing Council. There, Vera is in Sao Paulo. But also, if you work for a big corporate, it's you.
Yes.
And we work with people from big corporates who used to say, you know, it's not about me. It's about the brand.
Right.
But what do we as consumers say? We are not as much interested in your product. We are much more interested in the company and therefore the people behind the product.
Yes.
That's why we buy your product. That's why we use your service. Because of the people who make the brand.
Well, you know, in my older days, I was with a company, J. Walter Thompson, a division of J. Walter Thompson, who invented corporate image advertising in the early 70s. And they did 2 surveys with Yankelovich called Winning 1 and Winning 2. And they were the first to actually track the impact of brand reputation on the way constituents behave and could measure that. So would you work for the company? Would you invest in the company? Would you refer your nephew or your niece to work for the company? If you were a government body that had legislative authority and control, would you give them the benefit of the doubt in a sticky situation based on reputation? And they were able to measure by industry segment the power of reputation, and no news to us because this is now old news, but the way companies behave has a demonstrable effect on the way people buy and perceive the companies. And now to make the segue to, or comment on your comment, the CEO now, a number of companies were run by CEOs who was consistent with their style and personality to lead in a way that was public. So they were able to marry the personal and the corporate. But that's not normally the case. But your point is that's what the case must be.
Yes, that's what I think. And what we do with people, and it's not always it doesn't always have a positive outcome, but actually how we start working with people is, first of all, you have to define what you stand for. What are your personal brand values? What is your personal brand? And sometimes you come to the conclusion that it doesn't fit the brand you work for or the company you work for. So sometimes people say, wow.
Sadly, sometimes, right?
And they leave.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's better because it's very important that you work for a company or a brand that aligns your own brand values.
Yeah.
So when I write a story about you, when I create content about you, when I write down your vision, in a certain way, it has to be aligned. It will be aligned with the company's vision. Because how can you be a C-level person with a vision which is completely different from the company you work for?
Right.
That's impossible. It's not authentic, so it's not going to last. So sometimes this first step makes people realize, oh wait, I'm in the wrong place. I have to move.
Well, I was telling you about a friend of mine who I'd like you to meet, also an anthropologist, Judith Glazer, who wrote a new book, Conversational Intelligence. And one of the things that she was saying is that the company's talk has to match the company's walk, and the CEO's voice to his people and the voice of his people back to him in terms of the way the organization, 1, talks within the organization, and 2, the way the organization talks to the community, have to be, to your point, perfectly aligned. Otherwise, it's like a bad symphony. And she said something very similar, which is sometimes you get somebody that is totally out of whack, out of sync with the institution that they're in. And it's probably better that they figure that out sooner.
Yeah, exactly, because it will help the brand or the company in a later stage as well. I think reputation is in everything. And the shift between online and offline is getting more and more vague or unclear.
Yes.
But still you have to make sure that online, when people Google you, it has to be there. And you have to live it. And your reputation, either as a person or as a company, it's everywhere. It's like, I think reputation is almost similar to brand. It's a holistic, you need to have an holistic approach, because your reputation is from the man who picks up the post, to the person who picks up the phone, to the CEO, to the way people behave. It's in every little aspect.
And let's say I'm the CEO of Cartier, and I come to you and say, I have it, or somebody like a mutual friend of ours now who's left a very senior level position in financial services and says, I've been telling a certain story about myself for most of my career, but all of a sudden I have a different vision of where I want to go, participate in boards, be more of a free agent, and not so much anchored in a corporate environment, but leverage my corporate life to tell a bigger story about myself. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you work with people like that, a CEO of Cartier or somebody like our mutual friend.
Yeah, in the case of our mutual friend, it's really about, okay, I have this huge career behind me. I have big achievements, but I want to completely switch, use all my expertise, but go into a new field. Go abroad, go global, do things I really like, and use all the experience I have to help other people build or sell whatever their companies. Then again, it's a thing of defining, okay, who are you? What is your positioning? How do you want to be perceived? What are your strong points? And instead of making a resume, we write it into a story, because stories is something that people easily write. So I'm meeting with you, we're talking about this, I'm asking you some questions, and in the story, we integrate your vision.
So if you talk about your process, so let's say you would meet someone who is ready to tell a more holistic story about themselves for a variety of reasons, corporate and or personal, and both, more often both. So how do you engage them, and what process do you take them through to get to that story?
Well, the first step is, like I said before, is define what you stand for. So it's really important. Who are you? How do you want to be perceived? And what is your next business goal? Because in the end, what I try to do is help you achieve your next business goal.
Right. So it's never just within the context that you meet the senior management.
No, it's always like, okay, where do you want to go next? Right. Of course, we have to start by making a nice story, an interesting story about where you come from, your background, it's your credentials. We can make that into a nice story. But the most important thing is, okay, how do you want to be perceived? Where do you want to go? And it's my job to understand it and to write it into a story that we can use to send to people, or people, when they Google you, they will find this story and they will say, wow, this is a person I need for my board. Or if you're looking for investors or partners or clients, this is a guy I want to work with. Because people connect with people. They don't connect with your company or your brand. It's you they connect with.
And once you have that story affixed, if you will, in the sense of having a initial story, where does that go? How do you then disseminate it? And I'm assuming that is always with the approval of the client. And so you have that, then what happens?
We have the story, of course we have your approval, then we publish it online on a specific place which is open source, etc. It's a technical story. Yeah. Then we share the story, we seed the story, which is social seeding, and we place it in the Cool Brands network.
When you say social seeding, that's
mean the seeding in different social media.
Such as?
Such as LinkedIn, okay. Such as Twitter, such as Reddit, StumbleUpon. Okay. Because they all generate links to your story.
Right.
And we also place it in the Cool Brands network, where it's a network where we interviewed 800 people in the past 12, 13 years. And when
you have an archive or a repository of friends, clients that you then also integrate.
And so your story is there next to hers, next to his, right. the guy in Africa, the guy in China. So you're all in the same platform online. You all share your story in your own social networks. Mm-hmm. So that means when people Google you, your story will be up there. So it's a technical thing. We use different platforms. And then when people Google you, it takes some time. Yeah. but it will be there.
And from shifting gears a little bit, but not completely. So there's a head of an organization, and he realizes that his story needs to be a fuller story. And from an internal communication standpoint, in terms of how that person is perceived within his own organization, his direct reports, let's say it's a brand of 65,000 employees, is there an aspect of it that communicates to the total organization so that they begin to have a different feeling about the CEO as a result of the work you're doing?
Definitely, because one of our main objects is to humanize people, to humanize brands, to tell a personal story, to tell something that is human. Because if I tell people where you were born, where you come from, what you did, it makes you human. You're not just the CEO of the Luxury Marketing Council. No, you have a wife, you go fishing, you go on holiday. That's what makes you human, and that's what will connect to your...
And do you find once you've engaged, let's say, the top cat, that he in turn looks at direct reports and engages them in telling their stories in a similar way? Is there a trickle-down process for you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. But it usually stays at C-level.
Right.
And I think at this moment it's because people are changing jobs or things, but it's because it's relatively new. We see that it's really based on an adoption curve of Rogers, so we are now still in the innovators and the early adopters.
So where I'm going, which I understand, right now the idea of transforming the individual's voice and persona to be more consistent with the total person. At this point, your business does not necessarily involve itself in organizational transformation, but an individual senior management transformation.
Yes, that's true. And the main reason for it is, first of all, because it's new, and because the effect that the reputation of a CEO has on the company reputation or C-level people is 60%.
Yeah, sure.
So it's for brands.
Well, I could see if somebody, to your point, if somebody has a clearer definition and is more open about their story among the people that internally that he works directly with, that can have a significant effect, but the primary focus is on top management.
Yeah.
The half hour goes quick. From a personal luxury standpoint, what's your personal definition of luxury?
Clean air, running water. I think those are two. I mean, I travel a lot, and these are things that you sometimes really, really miss. And I think for me, that's luxury. I mean,
China, perhaps.
China, for example, Brazil as well. Yeah. The cities in Brazil.
New York's water is good, and the air is better. Amsterdam's water, I think, is pretty good. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, so it's a big luxury actually to come back in Amsterdam, to have freedom of movement. I mean, there's a lot of things, but that for me really has become luxury.
Well, listen, it's a very short, 30 minutes flew by. Thank you for our connection and all the support you're giving the Luxury Marketing Council. Best to come. Appreciate it very much. And thank you all for joining us at Conversations with Leaders in Luxury. Today with Anouk Pappers, one of the principals in Cool Brands. Looking forward to our next outing and seeing you soon.